This is Beyond the Bite with Joe and Abe, a cybersecurity conversation. In each episode, we get to know someone and discuss their journey, how they got here, and what they learned along the way. Through these conversations, we at Greylog hope to better understand what it means to be a good citizen within our community and continue our evolution as a cybersecurity solution provider. This conversation is sponsored by Greylog, an award-winning provider of SIM, log management, and API security solutions. I'm Randy, the producer of this podcast, and here are your hosts, Joe and Abe.
Morning, everyone. So, Joe,
Yes.
I actually have pre-banter before our banter today.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was slightly late showing up as
Yeah.
as our guest, and Randy are aware. And part of it was because I back-to-back meetings all day or whatever, and I ran up and I grabbed a bite to eat really quickly, like literally grabbed stuff out of the fridge, no plate, and started eating it. And one of the things I was eating was I had a really good smoked brisket on the weekend, and so I was eating, but brisket after a couple of days, it's still tasty, but it gets kind of like it's stringy. It's a stringy meat. It's a between the teeth stringy meat. Right before a talking video recorded. So I just slammed it, and I was about halfway back to my office when I realized, ooh, that was not smart. So quickly, went and took care of that. And just as I was running back to my thing, I was running back to my desk, and I was just like, ooh, pretzels. And I grabbed a whole handful of pretzels. And as soon as I walked back, and I saw my face covered, and I'm like, oh my God. So that was where I was starting with this today. But speaking of lessons learned, you actually gave a really good presentation to a group of people about hiring and hiring lessons and stuff like that. And as always, I love digging into the mistakes. So when we can fight over who goes first on this one. Tell me about a time. And I mean, we don't want to dig into individual people, but like just when things, oh man, this guy, Jeff, at his job, he's just a jerk. Man. I love you, Jeff. But where were some of the times where, let's say, you learned lessons harshly, or they say, failure is what causes experiences. Tell me when you got massive experience from hiring that may not have gone as planned.
Specifically?
Yeah.
Is this where I chime in and talk about the guy who cried about how much he loved his girlfriend during the interview? And
yes.
And I hired him anyway.
Yeah, you just won already. Yeah, that's
Wow, that's intense.
That is intense.
I don't know. I'm gonna let you go first. I'm gonna think through a couple because there's a couple that are tied for first.
Fair enough. It's a pretty good spot. I honestly don't have a good one. That's like Joe's always got good stuff on this. Really quickly, I hired for a contract position. Basically, we handled all the you get a new computer every couple of years. And we handled all of that for a very large area with a small team. Like we had built a really efficient process. And so the first couple of times I was hiring the contractors to come in and do all this and do the IT, the physical swap out stuff. And as we've talked about many times, I hired a whole bunch of people that, kind of worked, looked and acted like me. And like don't mind solving the odd problem. Don't mind, tuning something that I see is wrong. And so when I put 20 of those people together for a very highly efficient system, I didn't have one highly efficient system. I had 22 absolutely terrible ones. Like it was like the most catastrophic failure ever. And all I did was hire like incredibly talented people, and every one of them wanted to tweak and tune and fix everything. And oh my God, it was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. And I've never cried in an interview. I got a speeding ticket on the way to an interview once. And but that's I didn't cry. All right. Go ahead.
I've never cried in an interview. No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Career's
not yet.
young.
I'm not gonna say never. Because might be helpful at some point. But we did. This wasn't a bad interview. The interview process was actually great. We hired an SE, and it was a junior SE role. He was not. He had never been an SE before. This is like a thing we were taking a chance on a person. This is when like the market was really hot. It was really hard to find SEs, especially in the space that we're in. And he came in, and over his first 70 days or so, I think he made about 75 days, he missed every single meeting with our boss. It's just like we had like weekly meetings, and he had like a one-on-one with him every week and whatever, and every single one he overslept. And we still don't know what happened exactly in that, but I feel like that takes the cake for just like speed running. He was fine at his job. Like he was good at his job, but like he just like couldn't be accountable, and that was intense.
That's not even like a foot shooting cannon. That's someone playing Dance Revolution on a career landmine.
Yeah, he was an interesting one. He sped run our SE program more faster than anyone else has ever done it. So yeah, I'm lucky to say that I have a great team right now that I completely lucked out on hiring. But we're getting ready to hire some more and hoping that good juju stays with us. But man, it's always, you just never know who the person is, what they're what they're going through at that point in time.
Yeah.
And hey, you can hire someone on a Friday, they start on Monday, and over the weekend, their girlfriend broke up with them, and they can't stop crying all week.
Yes. That's
so it's
things happen. Things happen.
Yeah.
That's our time. That's it. Randy, that's it. Randy, before Joe starts crying, that's
all right, I'll jump in. Our guest today, Chad Spears, has been working in information technology for nearly 2 decades, serving as network administrator, infrastructure supervisor, and an IT director. Chad's leveraged his business infrastructure background to better assess and secure customer environments while determining key areas of vulnerability in his current position as the director of security operations at Infusion Points. Chad's a well-balanced individual. He doesn't just live and breathe cybersecurity. In his free time, he's an outdoorsman, a family man, active in his church community, and also owns and operates Spears Design Company and White Peak Farm. A busy guy. Chad Spears, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here. I was listening to your banter back and forth, and I was like, did these guys read how do they know my prior history? And I was worried like where this was going to go, because I was like, wait a minute, we didn't have this conversation prior to. But yeah, excited to be here nonetheless.
Yeah, super excited to have you here. For those that don't know, Chad is from a place that's near and dear to my heart, Appalachia of North Carolina, which is an area that I spent a large portion of my life. And so super excited to have you here. Super excited to have someone that also works with my alma mater and works with and is looking to grow cybersecurity both in Appalachia but also in North Carolina as a whole. And so we'll get into that at some point. But I have to start by asking you the question that Andy has asked me not to ask on several occasions, but yet it is the reason I do this podcast. Chad, we know that you use our SIM, but can you tell us why SIM sucks?
So I could get out my laundry list of things that I could put my soapbox out. But I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, we love the Greylog product, and look, we've used 100%. Several SIMs. I've touched several SIMs and throughout my career. But at the end of the day, it's for security guys. It's the same old. It doesn't matter what product you're leveraging, right? Nobody really cares about SIM until they care about SIM, right? And so I think that's one of the sucky pieces of it, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to see or hear about your logs that you're collecting and that you're normalizing and you're investigating. Nobody really wants to hear about it until it's needful. And then, unfortunately, when it's needful, it's never a good conversation that comes from that, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's just one of the things that I just think overall, man, organizations really kind of push SIM to the side. And so, overall, it's just helping people kind of change that mindset. Really is really one of the sucky pieces about SIM, if you will.
100%. I mean, as a person that's dedicated my career to SIM, I could not agree more. And, but why do you think they push it to the side? It is, you ask any analyst, any cybersecurity expert, SIM is so fundamental to what security is trying to accomplish. And yet, to your point, it's the redheaded stepchild at every single company I've ever been to.
Yeah, so I can really get on a soapbox here, and I'm gonna try to digress a little and not get there.
We love
but here's
soapboxes. Go for it.
here's the truth about it, though. So you guys were just talking about your hiring pieces, and I mentioned like, oh, did they read my resume? So one of the reasons I think that it gets pushed off and just doesn't hold as much weight is just people don't have a reality around it. And here's what I mean by it, right? It's never a big deal until it's a big deal. And so in my previous employment and previous career, man, my hiring story is this. Like, look, I didn't find cybersecurity. Cybersecurity found me. And what I mean by that is I worked in IT and quite honestly was there for about 13 years and thought about completely leaving IT and getting out of it because I went through a large cyber attack, ransomware. I mean, look, there's nothing quite like getting that call at like 6 in the afternoon and walking in and 85% of the environment is encrypted. That makes for a bad day. And being the director of the organization at that point, like, look, the buck stops with me. And so it's, answering all the questions, trying to figure it all out. Once it was all said and done, man, I was really like, you know what? IT is probably not for me. And so going back to that whole hiring thing, it's like talking about a funny hiring story. You have an IT guy that then goes and applies for a cybersecurity firm. And it's like, well, let me tell you about my previous career where I had this royal failure, if you will, or it could be viewed as that. But again, that's how cybersecurity found me. So again, the reality, what I've been able to do is take that and now leverage it in cybersecurity and help organizations see the reality of these attacks and help them understand that, hey, look, we were just this small little company or this what was perceived to be this small little organization here in the foothills of North Carolina. Why would they want to attack us? And hey, we're just a target of opportunity. And guess what? There's reality around it. So making it real to customers, I think, is one of the big key things. And unfortunately, some folks don't see the reality until it's too late.
Yeah. I think we as a people, as a society, as a population, have a really hard time with understanding risk that's not right in front of us, right? It's really easy to be afraid of getting mugged when you've been mugged, right? But it's a lot harder to be afraid of that, as a large white male that I am. It's much harder to be afraid of that when it's never happened, right? And I think that's the same thing that we see with cyber attacks, and the same reason that SIM is taking a very long time to disseminate from from the large organizations down into, the small and medium businesses like what you were a part of. And holy shit, that call is the worst call I've ever gotten in my life too. I think everyone on this call has gotten that call, and oh man, it's terrible.
I was gonna say I much prefer being on this side of it now than
yeah, 100%, 100%. You touched on some portions of kind of how you got to where you are today. Walk us through that entire progression. Walk us through how did you even get into IT? How did you even know that tech was for you? You're not from a part of the country where white collar tech jobs are highly appreciated, or at least weren't until very recently.
Yeah, definitely. So, just growing up, we really didn't have a whole lot of tech firms here in the foothills of North Carolina, right? It is what it is. But my aunt actually worked in tech just outside in kind of the Triad region. And so I'd go spend summers with her and go to work with her. And, I remember like I was like 12 years old building my first computer. And hey, man, I thought like this was hot stuff. I can plug up a power supply and plug up a hard drive and install an operating system and get this baby to boot. Like, okay. And that's really kind of where I cut my teeth. And then, you know, through that, the passion kind of continued to grow. And I think with anybody, when you're first starting out and you're the young kid, like, you know, I mean, this was back in the days of like LimeWire and Napster, like that was all the rage. So like, I don't know how many machines I trashed by downloading, you know, some type of, you know, malicious garbage on the machine. And, but hey, trial and error, right? You live and you learn. But then that continued to grow when I got into high school, and I kind of blush even saying this. And maybe in high school, I was running some scanners and stuff on the network and some of my computer classes, those types of things. But what was interesting is I got introduced to the actual IT guys within the school system there, and they was like, hey, you know, if you're interested in networking and in computers and stuff, and you know, maybe you're not doing the best in this class because you're a little more advanced, if you will, like you've already installed an operating system. We don't need to spend 3 weeks going over how to do that. You come in this period and you come work with us. And so I actually did that, and a lot of those guys are still there. They're great friends of mine and acquaintances. I really look up to them. But did that throughout high school, and then I wasn't your like traditional tech kid, I guess. Like I didn't look at college when I was getting out of high school and was like, you know, that's what I want to do. I was thinking to myself like, I've been in school for 12 years, probably don't want to go to school anymore. And so I actually 4 days after I graduated high school, I shipped out to this lovely place called Paris Island, South Carolina. And I spent some time in the Marine Corps, and I like to tell people I did the other point and click job there. So I was in the infantry there. Yeah, little different. But when I got out of the military, came back, kind of was pretty much like any other veteran. When you come back, it's kind of like, all right, how am I going to transition the skill set into something? And yeah, I could have went into law enforcement, things of that nature, but it just kind of came back with the whole tech background. Started taking some Cisco courses and really got in with the local community college over here, and ended up getting a job at the local hospital here. And in that hospital, worked my way up from just kind of desktop support to network administrator to then infrastructure supervisor, and then all the way up to the director of IT over about a 12-year period. And so that's what landed me in that position. And as I mentioned, you know, at that point, cybersecurity found me. This pesky little software called SamSam ransomware was back in the day, and I'll never forget reading that note. And I remember like the COO of the organization being like, "Look, what's a Bitcoin and how do we buy it? Because we need some of them." But it became very real at that point. And as I mentioned, right, like after we got everything back up, and by the way, you know, just talking about cyber attacks, like it took 6 months or more to truly get that place operational again. And when I say operational, I mean like being able to see patients. I mean, it was very, very stressful. I remember I worked 56 hours straight without sleeping. And my guys found me in a network closet laying on top of some Cisco boxes trying to take a nap one night while I was there. I was crashing and burning hard. But, I really looked at it and was like, I don't know if I can continue IT. Like, I don't know if this is it, right? And you guys heard that I do a little bit of farming, do a little bit of woodwork, you know, things of that nature, kind of renovation of houses. And I was like, maybe that's what I want to do, just a complete career shift. But then I met these two great guys, Gary Damer, which is the founder and CEO of Infusion Points, and Jason Shropshire, which is the chief operating officer there. And they came and said, like, hey, come interview with us. Let's talk. And so I went and sat down, and I was like, here I am, a guy that went through this massive failure of a cyber attack, right? And now I'm interviewing for a cybersecurity firm. And told them, I was like, guys, look, I just don't know if I want to be in IT. And they're like, well, look, here's the deal. Let's take this negative in your life and let's turn it to a positive. They're like, we need somebody like you that can help our customers understand the reality of it. And I actually did a little thing for another company with Infusion Points prior to coming on, and the rest is history. So I've been in with Infusion Points now, going on 6 years now, and so it's been a beautiful growing point for me. Really enabled me to have some really beneficial conversations with our customers that have unfortunately landed in the same position that I was in. And if you've ever been in that position, like you're just running around with your head spinning, like you just don't know what to do. And I've been able to kind of be like, all right, look, we got to stop, we got to slow down, and let's literally go through like the step by step. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that in that time, it's going to be a business decision. And you're at a crossroads and you got to make a decision. So, that's what's landed me here. That's kind of where we're at, and the rest is history. So that's what really got me into the cybersecurity realm.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think, I think your story resonates on a lot of different levels with a lot of different people. And even just with Abe and I mean, like Abe's a veteran. I'm a former high school computer delinquent, recovering computer delinquent, maybe we'll call it.
And I'm an ex-construction worker who shifted into cybersecurity. So
for the air conditioning,
right.
For the air conditioning, 100%. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about your story is the amount of hurdles that you've overcome over the course of your career. I think first and foremost, what keeps you going on those things, right? Like you said you were about to quit, you were about to give up. Obviously you got a lifeline. Shout out Gary and Jason, 100%. Those are great guys. Obviously you got a lifeline there, but you obviously hit roadblocks before that too. What kept you in it? What kept you going? Is some of your woodworking and design, your farming, part of that outlet, part of how you manage that? What keeps you in this every single day, and keeping to overcome those hurdles?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, anytime that we're having to deal with these types of situations, it's kind of high stakes, high stress scenarios. And so having a way to unplug and just get away from keyboard, if you will, is very, very beneficial. I mean, I definitely lean, as you mentioned, to my faith and working with my church and things like that. My wife, even, because her being still in here. So the interesting thing is my wife worked at the hospital when this was all going down. So it's like I would get it at work and then I would go home and she's like, hey, what's going on? It's like, well, let me continue this. But no, she's been a super solid rock for me. But I mean, really, man, just having a core group around you, and even you mentioned like shout out to Jason and Gary. I mean, those guys were really beneficial to my career in a point where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, and they were like, hey, look, you've got some real skill sets here that we could work with. And so they really helped me, even at my time at Infusion Points, kind of harness that. But I think that's probably the big thing is, right, you got to have a good support group. You got to have a team. You got to have people that'll challenge you and keep you pushing forward. And I will say, just hey, shout out to Infusion Points. This is one thing that I love about Infusion Points, right? Is like they understand the mental side of things too, how stressful these things can be, and so they're really good about, hey, look, you got to take care of your mental health, so take a day.
Yeah.
Like unplug, get away, because at the end of the day, if you're focusing over here because you're not fully there mentally, then we can't be fully there for our customers where we need to be. And so that's super important here at Infusion Points, and we really lean heavily on that.
I think that's fantastic. I think mental health is, and we've gotten into this a couple of times on this podcast over the course of it, is such an important part of being a cybersecurity professional. We live in a world every day that is so doom and gloom, right? The fact that you understand that we are, one phishing email away from life in America being drastically different than it is right now, right? Is a heavy burden to carry. And not only that, but in the shoes like what you're in, where you're taking care of multiple customers and on multiple fronts, you carry that stress of all of them all the time. And I think you really hit the nail on the head around having that group of people, having those individuals that you can reach out to, both within the office and outside the office, and really having that foundation that you can lean back on, so you don't get caught at 3 a.m. thinking about how terrible things are in the world, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a reality of what we deal with, and I think you hit the nail on the head on some really healthy ways to approach the preventative side of that burnout.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the SecOps team here in Fusion Points as well, the group of guys that's underneath me, right? Like, look, they make my job easy. I mean, they're at the end of the day, they're the ones that are hunting down the stuff that's going bump in the night. I'm the one that gets the phone call when stuff escalates to that level. But they do a phenomenal job.
100%.
100%. The brain's just another muscle, man. We all think we all need it and use it every day. I mean,
for sure.
If you made your living walking, you'd take care of your feet. Let's but yet it's easily overlooked. It's easily
Yeah.
overlooked. But I did want to come back to just briefly I mean, we kind of opened up with a comment about, failure makes experience. And I find there's kind of two camps, and I really know which camp I want to be in as my career progresses. And I think everyone here is probably in the same boat of people that recognize, hey, you were having a really bad time at one point, and you're sitting there, and you even mentioned it the way you told the story. You're like, I was sitting there, I was like, I just screwed this up colossally, and here I am
Yeah.
interviewing on a pivot. I think the other camp is probably what I imagine Gary and Jason saw, which is here's someone with very fresh experience of something that's going to happen to everybody, right? Like, you didn't screw up. You just got exactly the experience. You've now been through it recently to a pretty high
Yeah.
degree from the sounds of it. and and I
Yeah. I
think
mean,
they knew the diamond they were talking to, man. You were the precious gem in there. You're probably like, oh man. So think back on it. How'd you do in your salary negotiation back, 6 years ago? No, sorry,
no, no,
Gary and Jason.
no, you're exactly right. I think, looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020, but yeah, those guys really helped point out some key things for me and help me look at it in a different light. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting now because doing what I do now, like I remember putting myself in the exact same shoes that some of the customers are in. It's like, okay, look, I've been here. I know what they're thinking. I know what they're going through. I know the people that are probably lined up outside their door, pounding on it, wanting answers. So yeah, I mean that was the thing, and then that's what you mentioned is like Jason and Gary's like specialty is finding that experience. Man, they've been in the industry so much longer than I have, and they've been, especially with the work that we do with the federal government. Like Jason and Gary, they've been there. They know how people think. They know the compliance levels and things like that need to be checked in the boxes. But man, they're so good at finding that diamond in the rough. And then, hey, it's one thing to find the diamond in the rough, but you still got to polish that baby, right? And so that's the thing is, getting getting it to a beautified state, if you will. So I like to say they're still working on me a little bit, I guess.
Very well said. I like
Yeah.
that. That's awesome.
That's fantastic. Speaking of still working on you, what do you feel like is next on your journey? You've tackled a lot, you've done a lot, but you've also been at Infusion Points for 6 years. Where are you heading, man?
Yeah, so man, I continue to see the journey here to Infusion Points just because of what we're doing, man. I'm so excited. So it's probably been about 4 years, maybe even 5 years, really now. Time starts running together when we start talking about these COVID errors, right? Like it's like how many
100%.
years has it been, really? But like we made this huge pivot and shift at Infusion Points to cloud, right?
Mm.
And so us being an AWS partner, and so that opened up a whole new world that me coming from on-prem infrastructure and knowing on-prem things, right? It really opened up this whole new paradigm for me. And so now it's not just running a SIM on-prem; it's running it in the cloud and all the services that go along with that. But then a whole new level of security complexities and things of that nature. And so we've been able to kind of harmonize across Infusion Points, right? We kind of have like three pillars that we operate on. That is the build, manage, and defend pillars. And so I'm on the defend side, right? But we harmonize them so well together, and that's really where Graylog has come in. We take our build side, which is the audit and advisory pieces. Like we know what these auditors are looking for the federal market. And so we sat down and communicated across the board. And we're like, all right, auditors, you guys come to us every time and you're asking for evidence of this, 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 and this. And so we're like, hey, we're going to build a beautiful dashboard in Graylog that just with one simple click, we can bring up this, 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 and this for it. And it's been so successful for us here at Infusion Points, especially with the auditors through the FedRAMP stuff and getting customers through the FedRAMP ATO process. It's just been game changing for us. So where I see myself in the hopefully in the next 3-5 years is continuing down that path and continuing to just kind of grow the customer base here at Infusion Points, but also grow the team. So the SecOps team below me, I've got a great group of guys there. Really are all starting to just dive in and do some great things with Graylog. So we would really like to have 100% of our customers on Graylog. because we do have some lingering things that we're transitioning off. But 100% of the customers over there, and man, if we could just kind of live in a world where I can just help make this a reality to all customers, I think that's probably the biggest things for me.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we did not incentivize Sam to come and see these
You're not
things.
incentivized for the plug. I'll be honest with you.
100%.
It's honestly just been that big of a change for us. I mean, quite honestly. I mean,
yeah, that's amazing. I'm honestly like as I try to do, and I think Abe and Randy do the same thing. We try to do this podcast as security professionals, right? Like not as Graylog employees, not as Simex, whatever, like all that stuff. But I think just looking at the journey that you all have been able to take since I've known you all has been amazing. And super excited to see what comes next for you all and continue to see you guys grow and expand. It's been it's been fantastic to watch you guys grow. I want to shift back to something that you mentioned earlier, which is your transition as a veteran into the I was gonna call it the normie world. I don't know why I was gonna go with that, but we're gonna run with it. Having now like successfully made the transition, and cyber and IT tend to be really heavily targeted career paths for people coming out of the military that have a lot of technical skills working with different technologies and things, even in the point and click profession, as you would put it. Looking back, right, what advice would you give to your younger self, to others in this space that are looking to make a similar transition that you made?
Oh, that's a good one. Man, I don't know. I think just like you got to just really engulf yourself in just information. I mean, I don't want to say information overload, but just soak up anything and everything that you can. Really, find somebody that's in the space that you can hook up with and allow them to kind of just help you grow and really just create a relationship with them. I think is the biggest thing. I mean, I know I've got one guy right now in mind that really just kind of took me under his wings and kind of helped me in that transition. Right. I'm a Marine Corps grunt coming out of the infantry here, and I'm just like, hey, we can just absolutely, kick every door in and just hammer through situations. And even thinking of it from outside of a technology stance, right? But even more of a business mind. That's not always, you can't always take a sledgehammer to the problem, and so being able to play chess a little bit is beneficial in business. And so, yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing. But also for those people that are so you mentioned the military and that transition out, right? Look, I'd say by and large, 99% of our veterans or military folks are in there because they have a sense of duty, right? And wanting to serve and protect.
Yeah.
Transitioning out of that in cybersecurity, you still have the ability to serve and protect, right? It's just a little bit of a different vein. And at the end of the day, I really truly believe that, it's crazy times that we're in right now, but the next warfare is not necessarily going to be on the battlefield. It's going to be here in cyberspace. It's kind of cliche to say because everybody's been saying that, cyber warfare and all that. But I mean, there's some realities around it. So
yeah, I think that's a great. I really like the way you dove into like the sense of duty and the protection side of things. I think that's one of the things that draws us all to this career. Like I know one of my proudest accomplishments as a cybersecurity professional was when my youngest son my oldest son described what I did to his kindergarten classes. I protect the internet. And there's like no better compliment than that, really, I think, from a 5-year-old, because the internet is everything to him. He can't watch Captain Underpants without that. And so I think that's a really interesting like perspective to have on that transition and why it is such like a both a attractive and a rewarding career for someone that's already coming from that space. When and I like your perspective of like you got to put in the work, right? Like that's this is a very different world than what you're working on. How did you go about deciding in your course of the work that you were doing? How did you go about deciding, like zeroing in kind of on, you said you have a bunch of Cisco certifications, so like networking, and then ultimately on like security operations and that side of things? Because there are, as we know, there are so many different disciplines, both within IT and security.
Yeah, so I really focused on the networking piece, early on. Had some courses over here at the local college, community college, and
Mhm.
and they were Cisco centric. But even outside of that, like once I got into the hospital there, I quickly realized that, like, as a desktop technician, and even work with other engineers, and even application administrators, right? I mean, what's the age old answer? Like, if they don't know what the problem is, whose fault is it? It's the network's problem. So I wanted to like quickly be able to like put a lid on that as the network guy. And so that was like, I really just engulfed myself in like the whole Cisco, and I, Cisco certifications. Just really, I actually completely redesigned the network there, and wanted to just help people understand that networking is the basis of all of it, right? I mean,
Mm.
that's how things communicate. Packets being delivered. Layers 1, 2, 3. It's important to understand that. But then, making that transition over to sec, it's like at the end of the day, that's still the basis, right? Like,
Mm.
hey, if there's no connectivity there, it's much harder for a threat actor to even gain access, or do their thing, right? So we talking IP addresses a lot and things of that nature from an IOC perspective, and so it really helped kind of make that transition easier
Mhm.
into the sec world. But really, just kind of focusing and harnessing, or figuring out kind of uh, what vein in IT I really wanted to go down. I was like, yeah, hey, the networking thing just kind of fits for me because it's the basis of everything. And I feel like if you know networking, you can really pivot out to any direction that you want. There's a
Mhm.
lot of growth that can happen out of there.
Yeah, and I think that fits with a lot of a lot of the themes that you've been talking about. I think one of the things that is really evident just in speaking with you just for a short period of time, is that you're a very strategy focused person. Like, I would hate to play you in chess, is what I'm feeling like at this moment. Um, and I think that, that strategy of building a network around, and also like strategy around building a program around cybersecurity are not that different, right? I mean, obviously there's technical expertise that's different. There's like details that are different, but the way in which you're thinking about that is very similar. Walk us through how you think about that. How do you, not necessarily the network side, but the cybersecurity side. You spent your career learning strategy, whether that's on the battlefield, in networks, now in cybersecurity. How do you approach the customer that comes to you and is like, "Hey, so we've got a clam AV on all of our boxes, and and what is this thing that's a firewall?" Like, how do you approach that? How do you work with them and build a strategy that includes bringing them with you on the journey?
Yeah, so that's a great one because that plays into like one of the key things for me is like knowing that there's a difference, right? There's IT and then there's security, and
Mhm.
it's two completely separate veins. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations try to lump it all together, and then your IT guys are then responsible for security, which unfortunately there's some gaps and things left to be desired that it's eventually found there. But again, coming in and just helping them understand the basics. I mean, one of the things that we see all the time with in like penetration testing and then audits and things like that is a lot of organizations just they don't even have the basics down. I mean,
Mhm.
like nowadays, like MFA, that's a basic. You
Yeah.
need to have it. It's got to be there, right? And if you don't, then you're at risk for at least 80% more of attacks that we see. And I mean that's a large number. But yeah, I mean, coming in and just helping them understand. I think we do a great job at Infusion Points of doing some white glove services. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is like, hey, if you need somebody to kind of hold your hand and be close to you, um, Joe, as I mentioned, right here in the foothills of North Carolina,
Yep.
smaller town. We do business with a lot of large organizations in a small town, but here's the thing: we still have that small town belief and small town atmosphere, and that's kind of the way we operate. I love the way that Jason and Gary have both been able to kind of gel that together. We still believe in having that closeness together with our customers. And if they need a little extra hand holding, then you know what? Hey, that's what we'll do. Is we'll give them a little extra hand holding and help them understand and go the extra mile. We have no problem doing that. Um, but then again, helping them understand, I guess, the realization of like, you probably can't do this on your own. Meaning, you're either going to have to hire an IT or a security team to, complement your IT team, or you're going to have to look at, some type of third party service or something like that. But don't think that you can tackle it on your own. Because look, I've been there, and then I ended up with 2,000 computers encrypted and 185 servers. And guess what? We couldn't do it on our own.
I think you said something there that resonates with me a lot, as a person that, I made the transition from cybersecurity into this, dark side of solution/sales engineering, and I work with a lot of customers. And one of the things that always is interesting is trying to match them on a cultural level, right? Because 100% you're right that like dealing with companies that are you know that like are in the foothills of North Carolina or in Appalachia in general, just heck, even just in the South in general, is so much different of an experience than working with like a Mercedes or somebody like that, right? Based out of like in like the German part of Mercedes, right? It's a very different conversation. And or even just dealing with North versus South or South versus West, and you can really rub people the wrong way if you approach them in the wrong way, but you can also win a lot of points if you approach them correctly. And it feels like that's part of Infusion Point's secret sauce that exists for them is being able to approach these companies that have only ever been approached by these like slick willy, fast talking, like, like traditional IT security people. And now here you are, one of the good old boys that has learned the lesson, that knows what it's like, but also, speaks with the same twang and moves at the same speed and goes to the same church and is part of the culture. Would you say that that's like really part of you all's secret sauce and you all's kind of unique offering in the market?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think one of the things that's a differentiator between us and some larger organizations, right, or even not only say larger organizations, but just other organizations in general, is just the fact that like, maybe with other organizations you're just treated as a number, if you will, whereas with us you're our priority at that moment, right? Like, and so that doesn't just happen at the sec level. Like that happens across the board at Infusion Points. That's part of our culture. And that's one of the things that Infusion Points really tries to instill, not only with our customer facing stuff, but even, how we operate internally as well. So, I could pick up the phone right now and I could call up, the head of HR and just have an open conversation with them. But I could do the same thing with the building, ladies. Just each and every team being able to have those open lines of communication, have crucial conversations, if you will, or critical conversations when it's time to have critical conversations, because we have that openness. I think that's really instilled organizational wide, but it really does help us with our customers, and it really truly is who we are. It's not just a slang or it's not a marketing tactic or anything like that. It's what we do, and we understand that this field that we're in, it's hard. It sucks at times, and like we're here along this journey with you. I often tell people when I come in, because Joe, I don't know if you've seen this, or maybe some of you, maybe you as well, is like, have you ever gotten the sense that like they don't want you in there? And I'm talking about they being IT teams. When you come in, they don't want you in there because they're fearful of like you're going to take their job, or you're trying to treading on their turf. And I always come in and be like, man, look, I'm going to need you to help me. And at the end of the day, I'm just a tool for you. So look, at the end of the day, when something's going bump in the night, I'm hoping I can allow you to sleep peacefully. And, we'll talk about it in the morning. Like that's how I want teams to leverage us. And so let us take something off your plate. Let us make life easier for you. We're not here to take your job or anything like that. Furthermore, we're here to help you elevate in your position that you're in and in the organization in itself. So
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and you can't fake that, like in your culture. You can't fake that. Like I we there every company that's not from the South that tries to do something in the South puts y'all in their marketing, right? Just like every American company going to Canada puts A in their marketing, right?
you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, and you can feel that it's not authentic, right? Like you can feel the difference between Bojangles, which is a North Carolina fried chicken chain, that the Southern hospitality that exists in that brand and that marketing versus going to McDonald's where they try to act like they have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can tell it in the sweet tea, really, is where it is.
Are you saying that when someone from New Hampshire like myself says "you all," it doesn't come across as authentic?
It's not the same ring.
Not quite. Doesn't quite hit the same. Doesn't quite hit the same.
I can't even get involved in these conversations.
Oh man. I guess one final question in this space, even though I've hogged it all from Abe, but I'm gonna let him have the final question before we give back to Randy. One of the things that's unique about your position is you actually run the SOC in and of itself. How do you view team building within that environment? This high stress, can sometimes be high turnover in certain companies. How do you view both team building, as in like the activity of team building, but also hiring and bringing people in and educating them and giving them room for advancement? What is your perspective on that, and how can companies do that more effectively to better leverage their SOC?
Yeah. So I think one of the probably most important things right now, and I'm not shifting any blame or anything like that. So don't take it in that nature, right? On a certain generation or anything like that. But there is like there's a difference in the generation that I grew up in, and then the generation that we have now, and it's understanding that like, look, they're not going to think the same way that I thought. They're not going to come into the job field, looking to do the same things that I did. And so I think first we as leaders have to understand that, right? People are different. And so when it comes to team building, I often leverage a lot of my military backgrounds, right? Like you got to play to people's strengths. Everybody's going to have a different leader that they're like, that's their strength. And you as a leader, it's your job to find that. Right. So maybe you got somebody that's not so good at, maybe they're just not so good at like, doing face-to-face customer meetings and things like that, but they're a phenomenal report writer. Hey, then guess what? We're going to put that individual on writing reports. And then we have somebody else maybe deliver the reports to them. So, things like that when it comes to building out a team overall is just really play to people's strengths, understanding people are different, putting the pieces together. You mentioned chess the other day, right? Or just a second ago. It's a lot of that, right? You gotta continue to leverage the pieces and use the pieces in the way that they were intended to be used, if you will, to better your position each and every day. I think with organizations, one of the things they can look to do to kind of better their team and team building is, we often do things even here in Infusion Points, like they do a lot of after hours types of activities. A lot of these younger guys that are coming in, man, they love gaming. I'll be honest with you. Look, my gaming went out the door whenever Sega came out. Like that was it. That's a long time ago. I'm an outdoors type of guy. I like to be out in the woods and things like that. But so I can't necessarily get down with them on that level, but I support them in doing that. So that group of guys, they want to game together. Hey, yeah, man, that's a great way to have some banter outside of work, grow that team mentality, and the cohesiveness of the team. But then I think we got to be honest as well. There has to be the ability to have those crucial conversations and those one-on-ones, like I was discussing earlier, right? Like, I was told this by one employee years back, and it really resonates with me. And he actually he works at Infusion Points now with me. But at the end of the day, if you don't tell somebody they're doing something wrong, they may not know that they're doing something wrong. And so he came to me and he's like, "You need to tell me if I'm doing something wrong." And I was like, "Oh, hey, there's a lot to that." So if somebody's doing something wrong or we've got an issue that we got to address, we got to be mature enough to be able to address it. And so, addressing things whenever they come up or when you first see them, and don't let them fester and become a problem. I mean, that's the unfortunate side of team building as well. It's not everybody's going to gel on the team. And so you have to be honest with yourself about that as well. So yeah, I mean, hey, open communication and just having tough conversations at times, I think is a big part of it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And you heard it here. This shit's chess, not checkers, man. Abe, if you will take us into our final question before the beloved lightning round.
That's right. And I have probably never been more intimidated asking this question to somebody. And the reason being is, like, the bar is astronomically high right now. And so we've touched on some like integrity points here. So it's like, like you served in the Marine Corps, you've got a duty to serve and protect. That's what drives you. It's what drives a lot of your innovation and your strategy. Not to mention you practice faith. You're an outdoors person. You do woodworking, which on your bio actually says reclaimed furniture. Then we're getting into the farming stuff. And if I click on community involvement at Infusion Points, wow. That's and so this is a very scary question to ask. And I mean, even now I have to touch on it because I said it. The community involvement at Infusion Points is crazy. Like, education, mentorship. There's all kinds of, differently abled people, abuse prevention, community support. Oh my God. Wow.
Yep.
So the question is, what advice would you give to security vendors coming into the security space right now? And from your perspective and your vantage.
I think that's a great one. And I think that's one of the things that you were just kind of mentioning at Infusion Points, right? We got a lot of tentacles out there. We do a lot of things with a lot of different organizations. And I think vendors need to come in with the same open mindset of like, look, it can be a very narrow lens if you come in and just try to do business with all the big boys out there, right? But there's a lot of great small, mid-sized organizations out there that you could partner with. And I use the word partner being key, right? Because we at Infusion Points, we have partnerships with vendors. We have partnerships with AWS, partnerships with Graylog. We have partnerships with CrowdStrike. We have partnerships that we truly leverage. And I think that's the big thing. Like coming in here and thinking that you're just going to be the big dog on the block and you're going to try to run through this on your own. Unfortunately, things may stall out for you fairly quickly. But you're going to need to network and you're going to need to partner up. And look, there's no need for me to try to reinvent the wheel when somebody else has already done something, in a phenomenal way that I can then leverage and partner with them and use. So I think that's the biggest thing. Organizations coming in or vendors coming in, it's just, man, just look to build great partnerships and then tackle the market together. We often say, hey, there's enough of the pie to go around when it comes to security. We could all, take on all the work out there, and there's still going to be work, left over that we're not able to get to. And so understanding that it's not it doesn't have to be an us and them mentality. It can be a, us together, really driving together. I think it goes back to the whole team building piece, right? But strong partnerships, that's my answer to that.
That's awesome. I think that's a further continuation of what you've already demonstrated, like the integrity, the genuity, like being genuine. Just listening to you, North Carolinians? Carolinites?
Carolinians,
all right, North Carolinians, listening to you two North Carolinians talk, it's genuine is absolutely critical from the sounds of it. And that's all kind of root to what you just said. So awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. And this one is back to Randy.
All right.
Thanks, Chad.
Well, Chad, you mentioned a major event that made you question your career decisions earlier in this conversation. This next segment will probably have all 6 of our listeners questioning their decision to press play on this episode. It's our lightning round. And I always forget to set up the clock, but I'm putting 90 seconds on the clock. Answer each question as quickly and concisely as possible, because we will not be keeping score and cash prizes will not be awarded. Are you ready, Chad?
I am ready, but I do want to state by stating this. You remember that Joe just stated I'm more of a chess player than a checker. So
This is
time is not necessarily something I'm good with, but go. We'll give it a go.
This is mental checkers. So Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who?
Star Trek.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Mind reading. Is that a superpower?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you could work anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be?
Right here I'm at. I love home.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Wow. I mean, getting shot at is pretty adventurous.
Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Horse-sized duck. Just a little bit of time.
If you could only listen to one artist or album for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, that's an unfair question. Man, I like some Johnny Swim. It's kind of easy listening. I like that.
Nice. And name a book everyone should read.
All right, I'm going to take you back into my military days, but Lone Survivor. You may have seen the movie. The movie doesn't do it justice. You got to read the book. There's some phenomenal acts of heroism and valor in that, and so I really enjoyed that.
Awesome. And that's the lightning round.
Oh, well, that wasn't that bad. That was painless.
Awesome. Well, Chad, thank you. You made it to the end.
All right.
It's been fantastic. This has been great. I've really appreciated getting to dig into your background and hearing more about your perspective on cybersecurity as a whole. I think you and Infusion Points are doing great things. And excited to continue to track your journey as we keep going. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys having me on. Look forward to maybe doing it again sometime. Thanks.
100%. And to all of our listeners, thanks for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks, and follow our socials, which I still don't know exactly what they are, but Randy does.
You can Google us. We're on the Google.
We're on the Google.
Just find us on social media.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks.